house churches don't need to register their religious activities or to get pre-approval from the government. And how are the two topics related? Analysis. We had a team of legal experts poring over the law on belief and religion of Vietnam that became effective January 2018. It was designed to impose government controls on different groups, independent groups, and those independent groups, they don't want to register with the Vietnamese government because they don't want to be controlled by the government. But our legal team found out that the law does not require such groups to register their religious activities unless they plan to form a religious organization. Meaning, a group of individuals merely coming together for prayer service at someone's home does not need to register with or even to notify the government. However, local authorities don't interpret the law that way. They insist that pre-approval is required. And pre-approval is unlikely for groups that are not subservient to the government. So for the past 2 years, ABF International and BPSOS have collaboratively supported 9 Montagnard Christian communities in the Central Highlands in their legal challenges. And what does it mean? It means that with the support of our team of legal experts, Montagnard house churches would notify local authorities of their religious activities, thus challenging those authorities to respond in writing. And if there's no response, or if the response is not satisfactory, these groups would escalate the challenge to increasingly higher authorities until it reaches the central government in Hanoi. And this will be followed with administrative complaints and, if necessary, with litigation against individual government officials at all levels for wrongly denying citizens of their right to worship. Escalation to the central government also provides a basis for the international community, including the Department of State, the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, or USERF, diplomatic missions in Vietnam, and UN mandate holders to compel the Vietnamese government to comply with its commitments to international human rights standards. Now the government in Hanoi can no longer find excuse that they were not aware of what happened at the local level. Now, interestingly enough, in lieu of responding as required by law, the government of Chư Mga district in Đắk Lắk province, as I just mentioned, slapped administrative fines against 3 individuals belonging to 2 house churches. And these 2 house churches were exactly those that already recently notified the government of their religious activities. So I believe that this is the diversion tactic, a scare tactic, to discourage these 2 house churches from pursuing their legal challenges. Confident that they are on the right side, these 3 victims, again this year, just last weekend, held activities to commemorate victims of violence. So because they themselves, the community themselves, were victims of violence. So it's very much justified for them to continue to do that. But for the safety of these brave house church leaders, we are calling on the international community to please closely monitor their safety, their situation, their conditions, and all developments in those communities for the past few weeks. And we will continue, we both people as well, will continue to monitor the situation for the next few months. And with that, Again, I'd like to thank the UN NGO Committee on FORB for hosting this webinar, which is very timely and appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tong. So much information there, and I'm sure a lot of us have questions. We'll hold questions for the end, just so that we ensure we get through the other two presentations. It's my privilege now to turn it over to one of your partners, one of the volunteers for BPSOS, Loan Nguyen. Miss Loan Nguyen left Vietnam herself in 1971 and attended university in Belgium, and then completed her studies at the University of Bordeaux in France, where she graduated with a master's degree in child psychology in 1975. But the fall of Saigon on April 30th of that year ended her dreams of returning to Vietnam to be a child psychologist for an association of Catholic schools in Saigon. For those who aren't aware, Saigon is now known as Ho Chi Minh City. She decided to travel around the world, teaching religion, English, French, including in Iran and Egypt. She has been involved in many youth organizations and spent years overseeing youth volunteers at the Sanctuary of Lourdes in France. In 1990, she met her husband, who was a Catholic refugee from Iraq, and they moved to the United States. With her family, she has been an active member of the American Catholic and Chaldean Catholic parishes. And through her partnership with BPSOS, she and a group of volunteers in 2018 started a program to teach English to Vietnamese students who are located in Vietnam, Thailand, and many other countries. So I will turn it over to you now.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you the current situation of the Catholic communities in Vietnam. Today, we commemorate the victims of acts of violence based on religion and or belief. And Vietnam Catholic Church is suffering of violence as other religions in Vietnam, like Dr. Thanh just talked to us. Today, I will just present you the situation of the Catholics, then the response of the Catholics in Vietnam and outside of Vietnam, and finally the actions, because we don't want only to talk, we want also to move, to do something in and outside of Vietnam. First, the current situation of the Catholic Church. Yusuf recommended for many years, Vietnam has to be the top 10 countries in the world on the list of the countries of particular concern. In fact, the Catholic Church is a target of persecution from an atheist government. Communist in ideology and action. In Vietnam, there are about 97 million people, 7 million of them are Catholics. That means we are only 7% and we are minority. The Vietnamese government enforces in 2018 the laws on belief and religion, but systematically violate religious freedom. They use strategies that succeed in dispersing and creating panic among the Catholic faithful. I will discuss the 3 ways in which the government has done this. First, murders, imprisonment of religious leaders, then grabbing lands, strategies to take properties of Catholic communities, and finally, severe punishment of RPOC, religious prisoners of conscience. The first way the Vietnamese government attacked the Catholics. In recent years, an increased number of priests, religious and lay people have been attacked violently. Police attacks on individuals incite hatred and violence that lead to physical assault, stabbing, and murders. From 2008 to 2022, we recorded more than 14 cases of attack against priests religious from north to south of Vietnam. This year, in January 2022, Father Nguyễn Ngọc Thanh was hearing confession in his church in Compton when he was killed by a man with a knife. There was no trial due to mental health of the attacker, according to the government. In fact, Father Tan was harassed already many times by local police. The second way the government attacked the Catholics. Since 1954 until now, over 10,000 plots of lands, churches, and buildings belonging to Catholic communities have been confiscated, destroyed, and damaged without counting on private religious schools and Catholic hospitals. Example, the Nuntiate in Hanoi, confiscated from 1954, it became a park, and until now, no negotiation. In 2018, in Thiên An Monastery in Huế, in the center of Vietnam, the big cross in the land was damaged by the mob and the police, following by physical assaults to the monks. They still harassed the monks and grabbed the land. In 2016, the $11 billion Formosa Steel Company spun the toxic waste over about 200 kilometers or 125 miles of coastline in the center of Vietnam. More than 270,000 people lost their job of fishing, according to Amnesty International. The inhabitants of the region protested, and the government created the Red Flag Association to undermine violently the legal fight of the fishermen. The third way the Vietnamese government attacked the Catholics. It's not new that the Catholic defenders of human rights have been put on trial for exercising their freedom of speech and the freedom of religion. But recently, the punishment they have been subject to is far more severe than the supposed crime. For example, Nguyễn Văn Hóa, he is a Vietnamese Catholic blogger from Hà Tĩnh province. He was arrested in 2017. He was only 22 years old and charged for abusing democratic freedoms under Article 258 of the Vietnamese Penal Code. 7 years in jail, and he is still in jail. You can check all this information in typing just their name in website. Now I will present you the response of the Catholics in and outside of Vietnam. In Vietnam, the news about the murder of Father Tan was immediately shared on media channels like Facebook, YouTube, and thanks to the development of the new technology, network, website, smartphone, we can watch right away the protest of all acts of persecution. And we had also a small group of young people who wanted to learn English, to learn Vietnamese laws and their rights with the help of Vietnamese overseas like PPSOS. They are also learning how to prepare reports to share with the international communities. So whatever Dr. Thắng just said to you, that is the work of the reports. Outside of Vietnam, many religious orders like the Jesuit, Dominicans, Redemptorists sent news about the persecution to their communities around the world. For example, Vatican News or French La Croix newspaper or website. Also, different organizations watched, reported, and involved in their local government in attack for the attacks of the Vietnamese Catholic, example, Human Rights Watch, Radio Free Asia, Amnesty International, and many others. Here in the US, PPSOS worked closely with the Congress and other NGOs to report violations against the human rights in Vietnam. Finally, here is the plan of action for Catholics in and outside of Vietnam. In Vietnam, the young people need to continue their formation in reporting violence and awareness of the right of citizens and the law of the country. We have to create more partnering teams, more networks to work together like Catholic between Catholics and Catholic with other religions. In keeping with the tradition of the Catholic Church to help the most in need, the local communities need to develop and be able to maintain their institutions like daycares, school, hospitals, orphanages, senior centers in avoiding the grabbing of the government. Outside of Vietnam, we have a lot to do. The last summit in June of the Earth was a big event for us. Joseph is a voice to the Vietnamese government about the persecuted people in Vietnam. More actions can be done. For example, the CFOP in Bali in November. In addition, as a Catholic, we recommend the following: strengthen local Catholic groups by funding their actions and giving them the tools to report any violation of the human rights. We have to develop more partnering teams. For example, our group of Advocates for Faith and Justice in Vietnam, EFGV, was created in February this year after the murder of Father Tan. We work together with many groups, ONG, NGO to defend the religious group in Vietnam. We have to develop also more group with the young people. We have the Next Gen created by PPSOS for the future generation. We work closely with US Congress and NGO to reclaim also the lands, the properties confiscated in recent years. We have many cases. Finally, we work towards the release of the Catholic advocates of religious freedom and freedom of speech who are in jail unjustly, like Nguyễn Văn Hóa and many others. So you can contact the PPSOS and know our actions. And my last thought, the government of Vietnam says Vietnam is developed in economy and in tourism. But don't forget, Vietnam is still communist. Thank you for sharing and listening with me today. Thank you, Kenzie.
Thank you so much for that. You can feel free to share your and Dr. Tong's information in the chat if anyone does want to reach out regarding Vietnam. Bonnie, we're going to turn it over to you now. Bonnie Dugal, many of us know her on this call already, but she is the principal representative of the Baha'i International Community to the United Nations, and she's co-president of Religions for Peace. She seems to be president or chair of more committees at the United Nations than I can even count. I actually had listed them out preparing her bio, and it was just so many. Just know she is so involved on anything that has to do with FORB at the UN, on anything that intersects with religious freedom and women's rights issues. She's really been an integral part of this committee in, first of all, creating the committee and then serving as president in other roles. And now she's still a member of our committee ex officio. So Bonnie, we're delighted to have you with us here. We know you've been pulled in a lot of directions today in a lot of meetings and events, but we value your insight. And so turning a little bit away from Vietnam and turning a bit away from the International Day, although it's all related, is these two big conferences that took place this summer. And Bonnie, before you joined, I gave a bit of the overview historically of why we have these two separate conferences. So don't feel the need to go into that. But basically, we just want people who are interested and involved to know that these two things exist and to know that they're avenues for advocacy It used to be that if we wanted to get an item in front of a government, we had to go one government at a time because they weren't really working together on religious freedom at the United Nations. And now we have this alliance, and so you can get something to 30 plus countries kind of right away. And so between that and the summit, we just thought it would be really great to hear some highlights from this year's conference and steps moving forward over the next year, what you know, what you can share with us, as you and I attended both of these conferences this summer. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. I have been doing this work for such a long time, so it may seem impressive, but spread over 20 some years, more than 25 years now. It's just a day in anybody else's work day, I guess. I am going to go chronologically, and Kelsey was present at both occasions, and she's got a younger, much sharper brain than I. So if I leave anything out, Kelsey, you're going to fill in. So I take comfort in that. The first was the International Religious Freedom Summit, which is now a civil society summit, but led by the former Senator and Ambassador Sam Brownback and Katrina Lantos Sweat. Both of them are extremely committed to this issue, and they've been partnering with some pretty heavyweight organizations that are working on international religious freedom, including Kelsey's law firm and others. So much of the focus of the conversations were, to my mind, drawn from the topics were drawn from some of the campaigns that were launched the previous year, such as ending blasphemy and apostrophe laws, combating anti-Semitism, preventing and responding to genocide, the issue of women and international religious freedom, the issues related to international religious freedom in China. There was there were some wonderful. There was a panel, with the USERF commissioners. That's the United States Commission for International Religious Freedom, and that's a bipartisan commission that was established in the 1990s, and several of the commissioners were there, and they spoke. There were panels with victims of the victims of abuse based on freedom of or lack thereof, lack of freedom of religion or belief. And then there were a number of lunch and dinner events, which I again found very helpful because the host organizations showcased some of their projects. So it was really good to see what several organizations are doing to promote and protect freedom of religion or belief around the world. And then there were a number of breakout sessions on a whole host of issues. As Kelsey mentioned, this was a great opportunity to network and advocate about any issues that are of concern to us. However, I also found it to be a tremendous learning exercise because even for those who've been doing this work a long time, there's always more to learn. There's always more to learn from the strategies others are using, some successes, some tries which are still hopefully going to yield some success, and also sadly a number of new violations that perhaps I hadn't heard of before. So it was a very worthwhile experience for those of you who haven't attended one, and I would recommend attending in the future. I am hearing that it might be in the US or it might be some elsewhere, so stay tuned for more information.